to me, why don't I do a collection to try to preserve it? If all the others disappear, at least I'll keep these ones to remember everyone how important this was. So that was the beginning. Obviously, things don't go as we planned. So very, very soon I had a problem. And the problem was the pile of computers in my former room in my parents' house. And I had a problem. I wanted to manage this, and I couldn't find a way. So there were already too many computers. I remember saying, I will never go into the Sinclair calculators, which happened, and many other things that I can say I did. I wouldn't do it, and I did it. But so the fact is, what I thought was 6, 7, 8 models of computers eventually was starting to get out of control because all of them had something important. Then there was the computers made by the former employees of Sinclair, like the Jupiter Ace, like the Grundy New Brain, which was another computer that started. The project was within Sinclair in the beginning. So all of that started creating me a problem, and so I needed to find a way to share this. And so back in 2013, just like Indiana Jones, I was looking at my treasures and thinking, what can I do with this? And one thing I have, and one thing I remember doing was, I need to think big. So there are 2 or 3 things I have personally. I'm very ambitious, and I'm an entrepreneur by nature. I grew up in an environment where I wanted to play table tennis. I set up a team. I wanted to practice karate. That was not in the village. We set up a dojo, finding a professor, for a sensei for that, and all that. So I was used to doing things, okay? So I was looking at this and thinking, I need to share my love for these computers, and I don't know how to do it. So what can I do? And that's where a very important project for everything that happened started. So in 2014, I was applying with some friends to an entrepreneurship competition called the Risca-C that gave an award that was money. We needed money to develop. We wanted to develop a platform, a digital platform, to share these computers with the rest of the world. And we didn't want to do it using Facebook or something like that because it would mix up our private stuff with the things that we wanted to, our collections. So we won that award, which gave us the needed money to basically set up a company called Collectors Bridge and create a platform, a digital platform for collectors called Collectors Bridge. It no longer exists. It was shut down this year. The company was shut down 3 or 4 years ago because basically we had 2 expenses per month, the accountant and the server. The accountant I could get rid if I shut down the company. The server, we left it running until this year because I needed it to manage my collection. It reached the stage where I could not buy anything without checking if I had it or not in that platform. So the platform was very interesting, kind of Facebook, eBay for collectors. Some people liked it a lot, but it didn't get the traction we needed to justify it as a business. So we moved ahead, but the need to show the objects and all that was still there. Then eventually, I think around 2017 or 16, just calculate it, on the 34th anniversary of the ZX Spectrum, 2016, I was invited by a museum here in Lisbon to set up an exhibition about the ZX Spectrum. So they wanted to do it. Someone remembered there was this crazy guy in Coimbra that loves spectrums and he talks about it in the internet, and so why not invite him to do it? And I immediately said yes. It was an amazing experience, gave a lot of work, but I loved the feeling of having other people playing and looking at the computers and all of that. And that was here in Lisbon. So that was another thing that was very important to me. 2017, 2 things happened. I got a phone call from a friend asking me, are you coming to the UK this August? And I said, no, I'm not thinking, but what's happening? So I arranged a way for us to visit the former facilities of Sinclair, several of the companies in Cambridge. And I said, okay, when do I need to be there? So I went there. I couldn't convince anyone else in Portugal to go with me from the few friends I've asked. and I had an amazing opportunity to visit some of the places where all of this happened. And I visited some museums in the UK also while doing this. Another thing we did back in that year was I organized a small Made in Portugal area in the Lisbon Games Week, invited by a friend, and so I was there showing some Timex technology. So these are pictures from that period. So Lisbon Games Week, the 34 years of the Spectrum. That's an interview in a magazine that I will talk about later, and those things are from the Collector's Bridge. So old stuff, more interesting, this one in Cambridge, where Sinclair Research was the headquarters where they were, now belongs to the Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. And so we were able to visit that. Another thing that happened, and I couldn't explain why. So if someone asks me, were you thinking about building a museum? No, I wasn't. But I made things that eventually made it inevitable to reach that. One example is this. I saw that there was an hotel in Portugal, in Beja, selling all the CRT screens, all the CRT TVs they had, because they were replacing it. Gave them a call. Okay, how many do you have? Don't you have? What's the price? Blah, blah, blah. And I asked my father, that was going from Algarve back home, stop there and bring as many as you can, please. And so we bought, I don't know, 16 TV sets, CRTs. And then a few years later, I called them again. They still had a few, and I bought the rest. Why? Remember this. This is very peculiar, because I didn't buy them to use them immediately. I bought them, and they went to the attic. But because I said, it's inevitable, I'm going to need this. And when I want this, I want to have it with the exhibition needs to be, in terms of image, needs to be very strong. So I want to have all the TV sets more or less from the same period with all those details. So I did this without knowing I was going to open a museum, but thinking that there must be something here. So that was some of the ingredients that led to the museum. So I was basically looking at this, and eventually I realized, okay, this belongs in a museum, just like the Indiana Jones thing. So one thing that led to this, and when people ask me, okay, why open the museum, sometimes I say there's a polite or an official answer, and then there's the real one. The polite one is, okay, this makes sense. A lot of people I thought a lot of people would be interested on this. The real one was, I was with some friends in my house. I had a new house back then. So whenever someone came to my house, I would give a kind of a tour. They would stay playing with an arcade that I have, and then looking at and playing with some of the Spectrums. And one day, I was trying to reach a computer, and there were so many already in the shelf. It was a shelf with Spanish Spectrum computers. And I remember to get the computer, it was like 3 rows of things already. And I was like, come on, this cannot continue like this. This is getting out of control, so I need to find a way to do this. And there are 2 options. We sell the objects, or we find a partner to show them. And being an entrepreneur, I said, okay, what do I need to open a museum? Okay, I need someone to keep it open in the reception. I need someone that pays the electricity, the water, or I need to have money for that. I need the place. And who can benefit from this? CTO. 2 reasons. So this can be an attraction. And so I started engaging with Coimbra, Cantanhede, to see if there was interest for this or not. Eventually, there was. And so the formal contact started in 2019. Eventually, I created an association called Spectrum Generation, translating the name. And together, we created, first we started with a temporary exhibition in a museum, a local museum, to see if there was interest. And the fact is, in something like 8 months, we had a few thousand visitors. And now, you guys probably don't know Cantanhede. Cantanhede is a small city. It's not a tourist location, not like Lisbon or Porto, of course. And so this was a very important sign to us. We had visitors from Brazil, Spain, Portugal, England, Turkey, Poland. Now, no one comes just to go to the museum, but they come on vacation to Portugal, and because the word spreads about the museum, they say, okay, I want to go there. I had guys coming from the UK saying, I had to come from England to Portugal to drive a C5, the electric tricycle that Clive Sinclair developed. So all those things played a role. So going back to our timeline, and just to conclude the timeline, the contact started in 2018, end of the year 2019, we did the temporary exhibition in the Stone Museum. And 2020 was when we decided to move from the temporary exhibition into the museum itself, where it is located now if you decide to visit. Now, the project got a lot of attention, it's true. We opened and we did most of this during the pandemic, which is crazy. The reason we did this was because eventually the Lusa news agency issued an article about what we were doing, and one of the Portuguese TV channels called me and said, we want to go there and film even the painters working. We need to go there. And so we were forced with we needed to open the museum, which we did. There's been a lot of attention, of course, over time. Now we are, obviously many friends of us know us abroad, but now we are trying to, for example, I'm doing a presentation like this in less than 1 month in the UK, in a Crash, in an event from the magazine Crash, which was mythical magazine from the 80s and related to the spectrum. So just some, let's say, business cards. Now, what is a museum? I don't have any experience in making museums, okay? So I started studying about museums when I started looking at this. And in the end, I think I would summarize the work we do in these three areas. So we have to study and preserve stuff. We have to exhibit and document stuff. And we have to use all this knowledge and objects and all of that for education and training. And that's also a little bit of the reason why I'm here, because all this demo scene culture relates a lot to some of these areas. Now, to give you an example of the things we do and some of the treasures we've been finding, I'll use the example that is probably more precious to us in Portugal, which is Timex Portugal. So Timex Portugal was a unit in Caparica, in the south margin of Tagus River, where they assembled many of these computers and where they developed some more advanced modules because they were clever enough to have set up a research and development department in Portugal. And that was very, very important. For those that are Portuguese, I think everyone knows the name Inércia nowadays as a research facility in this country. Inércia started 40 years ago and had a very important role in many of these things. So they started more or less in this period. But Timex, as we know, is a watch manufacturer. It's the main thing we associate with the brand Timex. But they did many other things, as we will see. Now, how do we skin a cat like Timex? So when we have a company like Timex, like SGO, just naming the Portuguese ones, Landry, Triudos, so JG Componentes, MRE, so companies that had a role in this phenomenon, how do we study it? How can we do this? And I believe the approach is something around these ideas. So we have to research, and research means look at all the interviews that may exist, bibliography. I have had access to master's theses about things like I don't know if anyone knows the name Projeto Minerva project in this country. So it was the project that introduced technology in schools in Portugal. So we have things about Projeto Minerva that indirectly talk also about all of this. So we need to try to find it and research it and study it and talk to the people that were there. Then we need to preserve whatever we have access. Be it documents, paperwork from back in the days, from hardware. We had some prototypes we have been studying in the museum, from software, and luckily both the tapes and even the floppy disk, 3 inches floppy disks, they still work more or less okay. So our friends, some of you will know the name André Leão from Planeta Sinclair, which is a very important blog. They are basically our software preservation arm. So André is a good friend, became a good friend of mine, and we work together with this purpose. Then we need to disseminate what we find, of course. We don't want to have this to say we have it or we know it. No, we want to share it. And so for that, we need to have a museum with a strong presence. We need to be in events. We need to do all of that. We need to invite people to go there to see it, of course. And then the evolution, which is very, very important. And if we are able to reach this, I think it's the justification to all of this, which is the capacity to make technical analysis of some of these things. For example, we have prototypes, things that were not launched in the market. So we need to, it's not we want, it's a responsibility. We need to study it, we need to document it, we need to ensure that it doesn't disappear, and if possible, we need to recreate it, put it working. And I'll give you an example about that. And we need to develop new things, of course, on top of this, just like, for example, I imagine all of you know another friend I have here, which is Lord Cox's, Miguel Guerreiro. Miguel is one of the most important guys in the Spectrum scene because he developed the XDOS operating system that allows these computers to use the SD cards. No one knew he was Portuguese apart probably from his friends. So his presentation in the 40th anniversary we did this last April was one of the one that got more attention. From the Portuguese ones, it was the one that had more attention, which is very, very interesting to me to see. So we want to explore that also. But just to share with you some of these treasures, these are pictures from the formal opening of this unit in Portugal in December 10th, 1970. Some of you may have seen them in some videos that I launched when we started our YouTube channel. I'm just going to come here. This gentleman here was a Scottish guy that came to Portugal and set up the unit. And this one is, wait, oh, I'm having a blank. It's the, it's a president of the Republic back then, which was General, oh man, I forgot, sorry. Sorry, I honestly forgot. But so in the 70s, these were the gentlemen that, it was the formal opening of the unit in Portugal. Some other pictures. No one has seen these ones. So it's the first time I'm showing them. Margaret Thatcher in Portugal. You can see also Mário Soares, who was, this is 84, I think, so he was Prime Minister. And you see here António Gomes, which was the managing director of the Portuguese Timex unit. And unfortunately, he has passed away 1 or 2 years ago. And so, yeah. So this is one of the visits they did. We have a couple of other pictures from this visit, but this is just another example. Who? Américo Tomás, yes, that was it. Thanks. Man, I totally forgot it. So, what else? People don't know, but Timex was not a watch manufacturing location in Portugal. It was much more than that. Timex was set up in a farm, okay, with 70 hectares. I don't know if we can translate to acres in English, but 70 hectares, so huge. And so, in one tiny corner of that location, Quinta dos Medronheiros is the name, they decided to create the watch manufacturing facility. So, then Timex had, over the years, had many different activities. They even had teams of futsal, football, or soccer, if any US guy is here. They had table tennis players. They had so many things. So they made a magazine which has 9 issues, 9 numbers. And this is just one example of it. The funny thing about the magazine is that it also has advertisement. So they were able to convince their own suppliers to pay for the magazine, which is something that is crazy. But remember, we are talking about a facility with something like 2,000 employees. We are not talking about a small thing. So all of these are things that we didn't know this existed. I doubt any Spectrum fan knew this existed. And we were able to have access, and this is available in the museum if you go there and you see it. Other things. So they were trying to develop in Portugal some switching mode power supplies, which were never launched. From one of these models, we have prototypes. From the other one, no. Another thing they launched was, and I don't know, honestly don't have the answer yet, if this is related or not with the pocket TVs that Circlife Sinclair launched in the UK, and they were assembled in Dundee, in Scotland, in Timex, in another Timex unit. But so Timex also sold the flat CRT display module. I don't know if it's somehow related or not, but the fact is that they had this brochure about this product of theirs. Now, and I won't take you much more time, but still a couple of ideas. This is in Portuguese, so for those that don't speak Portuguese, sorry, but I'm just going to give you an idea of what this is. So we had access to more than 3,000 PDF, now they are more than 3,000 PDF files that we scanned from the archive of, let's say, the #2 guy at Timex Portugal. So when he passed away, the family contacted us. I spent many, many weekends gathering the information. Another friend spent many time scanning it. And we will eventually make it available. We just need to check what. And this gives us lots and lots of information that as a fan of this computer or as a researcher is very, very important. For example, this is a report sent on November 19, 1986 of a travel that the commercial director, Luís Bandeira, the guy came from Brazil 1 month ago just to visit the museum and meet his friends. It was the first time I was with him. And so Luís Bandeira went to China to sell a system that Timex was developing called TENET, Timex Educational Network. The idea was a computer in a classroom. The professor would have a computer connected to up to 25 stations in a kind of a LAN, and he was able to control what each student was seeing and loading and things like that. So there's lots and lots of documentation of this project. We have a couple of prototypes. It was never sold. Doesn't exist. It was never commercialized. And I was getting information like someone would tell me in an interview, oh, this was for the Chinese railway. We tried to sell it there. Then someone would come and say, no, that guy is mistaken. It was for India. And the fact is, eventually, we have paperwork proving that both of them are right. Because we found paperwork showing both things. So, look, people trying to remember what they did 40 years ago, what was just a job for them, their job, a very important period, but it was just their job. Of course, there are mistakes, of course, there's all of that. So it's fundamental to have access to information like this, and this is just an example. This is the system I'm telling you about. No one knew this exists. No one knew, I mean, come on, I'm not the only guy knowing this, but the fact is this was not widespread. The fact that there was a brochure describing the system in detail, when I found this, eventually I found a guy in US that came to Portugal back in the days and had another copy. But it was unheard of. So this is for a fan of the spectrum, for a Portuguese fan of a spectrum that knows that we evolved the system above its, let's say, limits. Come on, this is gold in terms of the relevance of it. Now, entering the final part. Opportunities. For those that may have been, and a couple of you were in April in Cantanhede in the event we did, the 2 days event we did in the 40th anniversary of the Spectrum. Or for any of you that may have seen or will see the videos of those sessions, there was a session about Timex. And a friend of mine, Álvaro Lopes, presented the work he did to basically reverse engineer the art of the computer, not the Z80, but the ULA kind of thing. In the Timex machines was the SCLD, a gate array, that was developed with Inércia, like I said before. Now, what I did was, I'm not going to enter into any technical detail because I can't do it, but so we extracted it from a donor computer, and he made a board where basically he injects signals and he gets the result, and he reconstructed it. And we demonstrated it for the first time, loading a game in a TC2048, which is kind of a Spectrum replica made by Timex. Why am I talking about this? Because guys, having knowledge like the one you have, technical, detailed knowledge about how these things work, like Lord Cox's, like many of you, I'm just giving the example of Miguel of Lord Cox's because I know of what he can do and he's trying to help in some fronts already. That's kind of rare. So for a project like ours, come on, I'm the entrepreneur. I'm not the guy that is able to spend the night coding and trying to do this kind of, sometimes I joke with it and I say it's kind of magic. Okay, or witchcraft, whatever. But so what I mean is, these are opportunities of evolving the knowledge that exists, maintaining the machines, pushing it above its limits, which is more or less what you are doing with software on the demo scene. So why not trying to find ways to do things like this? I'm going to show you another 1-minute video, and then I just have another slide to wrap it up. And this video, again, sorry for the lack of sound here. This video is a little bit different. It's not about the content of the museum. It's about the things we cover in the museum. So everything Clive Sinclair did, that's one of the things we do. We have the involvement of family, of relatives of Clive Sinclair. We have the involvement of Steve Vickers, of Timex Portugal engineering team. Luís Bandeira was the commercial director. And many others that were in Sinclair in UK developing all of this. We've been preserving games that were lost in time, important Portuguese games that some were never launched. We organized the GOTY Game of the Year, so kind of the Oscars as we like to see it for development in Spectrum. There are publishers now launching games in tapes. This is Rui Tito, this is Paulo Dimas. Some of you may remember him. He was presenting things about games in the TV. In Portugal. Clive Townsend from Saboteur, Oliver Twins, Jim Bagley. I was with him recently, Lord Cox's. Paulo develops hardware, Álvaro presenting the board. Some guys from around the world that we've been speaking to, trying to gather more and more information. All of this is in our YouTube channel. There's a magazine, Spectrum, in Portuguese language. So basically, we try to be the kind of the glue that puts all these individuals collaborating to the same purpose, which is to keep the memory of the Spectrum alive and push it above its limits. Now, I don't think I need to come here and convince you that the Spectrum and many other computers is still alive and kicking. So there are more than 200 games per year being launched for the Spectrum. In the good year, 300. So, things like, I know, for example, some of you know the Element ZX, the ZX Uno, which are the Spanish clones. The Next, I saw one there in the Regi. Some of you may know about Planeta Sinclair, one of the most important blogs, and it's written in Portuguese, which make it harder. Only 25% of the visitors are from Portugal. They reached 1 million visitors recently. So this is the work of Andrea Luna Leão mostly and his team. And is the author of this book, The Portuguese Programmers. Guys, before we started this, or before Andrea started this, there were a couple of books in Portugal saying, okay, we heard about something like 20 games or 30 developed in Portugal. And everyone knows Paradise Café and a few others. There was Rui Tito and Paulo Carrasco, which were the creators of Alien Evolution, the first Portuguese game to be commercialized abroad by Gremlin in the UK. And so Alien Evolution is a game made by two young guys from Portimão in the south, in Algarve. And so we interviewed them. But so what I mean is, when Andrea said, okay, I want to write a book, I told him, first book of the museum will be yours, so please write it. He was able to recover around 700 different titles about things that were done in Portugal. And because we didn't have a commercial circuit, because there was piracy everywhere here, no one knew about this. So there was an amazing history behind this that is now written in a book that the museum has. We have TV programs like Retro Gamers related to SIC, presented by a friend of mine, Marco Fresco. We have the GOTY that I mentioned. We have the Crash magazine that is back. Lisboa Games Week will be there. It's in 2 weeks, so we will be there with an extension of the museum. And Espectro, which is Espectro is a Portuguese magazine about the spectrum phenomenon, and Tecnamic or Bitnamic is a publisher that is launching games even today. There is a company in Portugal still producing tapes in Maia in the north, which is crazy. And one thing probably some of you may not know, I remember I shared this with Philippe and Miguel. So I bought this book and I've been reading it, and this is my introduction to the demo scene, apart from being here. So there's a book about the ZX Spectrum demo scene from some Polish guys. It's from what I understood, a translation from something they wrote before. I remember Miguel knew this existed, not the book itself. So if anyone is curious, I found it online, and I can try to share more information. But it's funny to see there's a book on the demo scene of the ZX Spectrum. So I found it amazing. And this is basically the end. And my final remark is this. It's just to recap this. Why am I here? Because I think you guys have a lot of merit on what you do. You have a lot of knowledge. I think what we're trying to do with the museum is unique. It's a unique project in the world. We are obviously trying to put an extension in UK and things like that. So there's lots and lots and lots of things that can be done here. The museum can be a way to give more visibility to this. But in the end, the technical knowledge is yours. So if you guys think there's something related to this Spectrum platform, these Timex computers, you guys want to do, and if you think the museum can somehow be involved, my contacts are there. I'm here precisely to share with you that we are always open to collaborate as long as it is good for everyone. Okay? So if anyone has any questions and there's time, I'm available, but if not, it's up to the organization to define the next steps. Thank you.
Does anyone have any specific question?
There's one question there, if there's time.
Can you just shout it out, and João, please repeat it?
Yes. Okay, so the question is about how do we approach schools and how we introduce people to all of this, and if we did already something. It's a very good question, thank you. Remember one detail, pandemic. This started during the pandemic, so what I mean is, no, the answer is, from time to time we have visits from schools, okay? But if it was like when we started the temporary exhibition, no. We used to have much more. And we didn't promote them more. For example, back in 2019, even the City Hall would get the bus and get the students to come to the museums in the city and all of that. So we haven't done it. I think one of the angles to address your question is another thing, which is the education. So I think it's inevitable that we also look at how can we introduce I have a nephew with 5 years old, so eventually, in the next years, I will need and want to introduce him to all of this. So how do we do it? Of course, today is different. We won't put people programming basic or only basic without showing what is the current technology to be used. But so what I mean is, it's one area that we are now addressing. The presence in Lisbon Games Week it relates a lot to that because we are in the education area. So we are kind of I don't know if we are the most important stand or a booth or not there, but we are a very important anchor booth in the exhibition area. And that puts thousands and thousands of students visiting what we are doing. So there's a lot of work still to be done. There's not a clear strategy already defined, but it's inevitable the museum will eventually have classes on programming, yes, and it's inevitable the museum will bring people to visit. One thing I want to do, but I haven't found the means yet, I want to have, like we used to have the libraries in a bus, going to the schools. I want to have a smaller exhibition in a bus going to every school in this country. That's something I can openly say I want to do it, but I need the bus and time to do it, so haven't done it yet. Any other question? Doesn't seem so. Flip.
Thank you very much. Please give him a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, João.
Thank you.
So we will take a short break, maybe 10 minutes break, and then we'll start with graphics competitions, I believe. I think we're still behind on schedule. So yeah, please grab a drink, get some food, all that jazz, go to the bathroom. See you soon.